Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're having a great day, drinking lots of water, staying hydrated. I've eaten something at some point today if you haven't had your chance to, because we're sitting back relaxing and reading some scary stories today. I am quieter, one for the aesthetic, and two because it's kind of late where I am, and I am not living alone right now. Happy birthday! Thank you so much. So first things first. There we go. Perfect. So I'm 21 today, which is legal drinking age where I am. I tried wine for the first time and it felt illegal, even though it was legal. And it tasted almost like nothing. I'll tell you that. It tasted like pretty much nothing. It had a slight flavor to it, like a juice flavor. I mean, it's made out of grapes, makes sense. It's a fruity wine, white wine. I had 2 singular tiny sips, and that's all I had because I have no intentions of being drunk, and I'm afraid. But it was interesting. I went on a lunch picnic, and I had pizza for my birthday dinner, and it was awesome. But it's been a while since we've done some scary stories, and I love horror. It's one of my favorite movie genres. I adore it. So here we are. We're gonna let this song finish though. It's adorable. I love it. It feels really weird to be 21. I feel like a real adult now. And this is the last big one for a while. You know, you got 16, then you got 18, now you got 21, and that's about it for a while. Next big one will be 50. That was adorable and I loved it. Okay, we're doing this. So for half the stream tonight, we're starting in the Creepy Encounters subreddit, and then we're going over to the Scary Stories subreddit. So we're gonna jump right into this. It's been a while, oh my gosh. Here we go. Scary Stories. Let's just get right into it. This is called Creepy Encounter While Babysitting. I'm looking at the top post of the last month. Good day, everyone. This is something that happened this past Friday while I was babysitting. For a little bit of context, I'm a 21-year-old female, a college student, and have been babysitting since I was 14. So oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. My throat just went so dry. So to say a side note, this is not me. I had no idea. This is weird. I'm not an expert on literally anything. However, over the years, I've learned caution and resilience. At age 15, I took babysitting classes at our youth center, as well as a female self-defense course. So I babysat at least once a month for this one family. I like them because they pay me more than my usual hourly rate. They have a big house with internet that I can use to do homework, and the 2 kids are surprisingly well behaved and compliant. So the 2 parents have like a monthly ritual of going out around 5 p.m. and returning a little after 2 a.m. I was offered to sleep in the guest bedroom and stay until morning. I usually just stay awake and abuse their satellite TV and then leave when they come back. The house is in a nice neighborhood without a whole lot of neighbors. Very quiet. Also, their house is armed with an alarm system that I have the code to and can arm and disarm it through my phone. That'll be relevant in a little while. So, I always take them for pizza at this place that has like an arcade. So, I do this so that they tire themselves out and go to bed early. Plus, the little girl that I babysit is also on a mission to win a family of stuffed animals from the prize store, so I'd be the world's worst babysitter if I didn't guide her in that pursuit. If anyone may be wondering, for whatever reason, after Friday night, she only needs the daddy stuffed animal before her collection is complete. Go girl. Anywho, I'm rambling. I was sitting at the table and watching them play in the ball pit while also texting on my phone. This couple came over and sat at the same table as me. It was a long table with parents scattered here and there, so it wasn't alarming. The couple looked normal enough. Both were probably in their mid-20s, possibly a little older. They talked to each other, but then the guy asked me, "Are you the one babysitting Dr. So-and-so's kids?" So the parents of these children are both doctors, and the specific region that we live in, this would be common enough information, but I still chose to answer the question with an irrelevant statement. I wonder what they used to make the pizza here. Yeah, I know. I'm a master of deception. I deserve an Oscar for my performance. However, they seemed to see right through my clever ruse. They started making weird comments. They talked about the kids' parents. They commented on the daughter and how they wondered if she would look as pretty as their mom. Okay, my dudes. I don't know if that was intended to be creepy, but I'm just going to be safe and pretend it was. Then the woman says to me, and I quote, "Do they really let you dress like that while watching their kids?" She motioned with her eyes toward my t-shirt, which was admittedly a little tight, though aside from a little bit of a bosom crack, not revealing. I have a thin frame and a large chest. It's like 90 degrees in my region of the US right now, so it's not like I can wear a hoodie. And my boobs have a Crips and Bloods type relationship with any kind of shirt that has buttons. I saw that as my cue to go and get the kiddos and bring them to get their prizes so we could bounce. After some very thought-provoking and philosophical debating, they both got their prize and we headed back over to the house. So, fast forward a few hours. Both kids were bathed and put to sleep. I delivered a heartwarming rendition of Goodnight Moon. That book was huge in my childhood. And read a very spooky chapter of The Werewolf of Fever Swamp and tucked them into dreamland. It was around 9 p.m. I was caught up on homework and just watching TV when I heard some movement on the porch. I didn't think much of it at first, but the doorknob started rattling violently. I initially started moving toward the front door to see who it was, but miraculously I remembered that it was late at night. I was home alone with 2 kids, and I very much wanted to live. I turned around to grab my purse, which is where I keep my taser. As I'm moving, the back door starts rattling as well, and was accompanied by some banging noises. That's when I remembered that I had enabled the alarm system after returning. Now, if this was a horror movie scenario, of course the alarm wouldn't have worked, and the intruders would have made their way inside. I hate to disappoint you if you were expecting something more exciting, but I enabled it again quite easily with no incident. I ran upstairs and grabbed the 2 kids. I put them in their parents' room in the walk-in closet. I still hate that I scared them. When I gathered them up, I gave no context as to what was going on. I didn't want to tell them that someone was trying to break into the house, but in the process of the fear of not knowing seemed to be worse. I instructed them to stay there and stay quiet, and only to open the door if they hear me talking to them. I then locked the bedroom door, which was the only door on the upstairs floor that locks. I sat there with my taser out and hit the panic button on the phone app. Several minutes went by, then I got the notifications through the app that the alarm system was disabled. I planned on calling 911, even though the panic button already took care of that, but I found it more beneficial to arm it back. Then it disarmed again, so I armed it again. Then it disarmed again, so I armed it again. By this time, I could hear what sounded like 2 sets of footsteps walking up the stairs. Good job, girl. You locked yourself inside with 2 potential assailants. I was holding it together for the sake of the 2 kids, but not too deep inside. I was scared to death. When I heard the footsteps get near the door, I saw the door twisting and took a deep breath and pulled the trigger on my taser just to let them know I was armed, though it realistically wouldn't do much good. I informed them through the door that the alarm was triggered and the police were on their way. Thankfully, I was greeted by a familiar voice. "It's Dr. So-and-so. You're safe." I opened the door, ran to their arms, and started sobbing. I hadn't realized truly until it was over just how scared I really was. The kids came out without me giving them the okay, but their parents were there, so I'll let it slide. When I enabled the alarm on my phone, they both got the notification from the place they were at. With the app, when you have the option to call the porch cameras as well. When they got the notification that the panic button was activated, they saw through the camera that there were people on each side of the house, one man, one woman. When the alarm kept disarming, that was them trying to get into the house. Police report was filed by them, and I gave a statement mentioning the two weirdos I met earlier in the day, even though there really was no evidence that would directly point to them. Camera footage didn't give any positive face IDs either. So yeah, I was scared. I'm getting over it now. I'm just grateful that the couple that I was babysitting for were close enough to make it to me. I hate to say it, but I find the police response time to be terrible. I'm currently back in my own apartment an hour away. I checked in once to see how the kids were doing, and they're holding up fine. I'm just glad they had proper protection in their home, and that this didn't end up to be worse. I'm just looking through the comments to see if there's anything interesting. People consider pepper spray. People think people were going to kidnap the kids and hold them for ransom. Because as doctors, they make a decent amount of money, you know? How did the two creeps keep disabling the alarm from outside? OP says, an answer I never quite got. From my own perspective, I assumed it was the parents of the children that were disabling the alarm to let themselves in. I'm not certain though. I really don't think it was an outside source. Everyone's saying the pizza place should have cameras. Okay, here we go into another one. This is from 19 days ago by Civil Specific 1887. It's called An Encounter with a Stranger at the Beach. It was a lot worse than I thought years ago. I never had the stranger danger talk with my parents, and we lived in a small town where I liked and trusted everyone. Starting at the age of 6, I was taught to commute by public transportation alone with my youngest brother. Never thought an adult would harm a child, except my grandma, for some reason. To be young and to be absolutely effing dumb. When I was 11, I was walking alone at the beach when a middle-aged man approached me and asked to take a photo of me. I smiled and he snapped a photo with his little digital camera. He then asked me to take my shirt off, saying we were at the beach and I would look better in the photo without it. I actually thought it was an appropriate thing to ask, and I obliged and smiled again for the photo. I didn't feel uncomfortable or scared. He tried to make conversation and asked what I like to do. I told him I like to play video games. He told me he has a PlayStation in his room and invited me over to play video games. If the sun wasn't almost down, I probably would have said yes. Instead, I said I had to go back to my family's room because it was getting late. He held my shoulder, urging me to come with him. Told him again I can't go with him. He hugged me and said goodbye. I just thought it was weird, the hugging part and not everything else, because I never really was a physical touch kind of person, and I really liked my personal space, but I shrugged it off and never spoke about it to anyone. Years later, in one of my deep shower thoughts, I realized how messed up that was. Edit. On many sleepless nights, I think about how somewhere out there, a freak has a photo of me when I was a child. I feel for people who have had it way worse. Someone said, yeah, you weren't dumb at all. Sometimes things happen to us as kids we don't realize just what it was until we get older. This guy was up to no good for sure. Yeah, I think as a kid you're not dumb. You just don't know because you weren't taught. Or you haven't learned it yet, whatever. Everyone's saying it could have been way worse. Everyone's saying I wouldn't call you dumb. Well, that was interesting. Okay, this next one is from 23 days ago by Lulicus. It's called Taken Away by Kind Strangers. So, this story took place when I was 12-year-old female. It is more than half my lifespan ago, but I still get really uneasy when thinking back to it. I try to block it out of my mind and not guess as to what could have happened if not for two kind strangers. I was walking home from school one day, a 4-kilometer walk, walk around a busy road. I was walking alone, however. At one of the intersections I crossed, there was a tall, dirty-looking man that noticed me. I would guess his age was early 30s. Being a kid back then, I struggled telling the age of adults. He started following me and trying to strike up a conversation. He kept telling me I was beautiful and that he wants us to be friends. He asked me where I live and if my parents would be home. He asked me so many questions, but I tried to just shrug him off and be polite. I didn't answer any of his questions, just increased the pace at which I walked. When we were nearing the block on which I lived, I started becoming really uneasy. He wanted to follow me home, and I did not want him to. He gave off a weird vibe because adults did not usually speak to me that way. The only way I could get rid of him was to give him my cell phone number and agree to answer when he calls. Because the situation made me uncomfortable, I gave him a fake number and hightailed it out of there. A few months passed without me running into this man again, so I completely put it out of my mind. He was probably just some random weirdo. However, as you can guess from here, things did not stay that way. One day, about 4 months later, I found myself walking home after school again. I will admit that I wasn't paying much attention to my surroundings. That was until I heard what sounded like footsteps running up behind me. I reflexively turned to look around, and it was the same creepy man I had encountered before. He slowed his pace as he reached me, but was yelling the entire time. He figured out I'd given him the wrong number and he was furious. He kept yelling and yelling that I think I'm better than him, and that's why I gave him a fake number. I was terrified in that moment, as he was very angry. I was afraid he was going to hurt me, but I couldn't grab the attention of any motorists. I sped walk to the closest petrol station, which was luckily not too far, with him following behind me, still yelling the entire time. When I got to the petrol station, I immediately got the attention of two burly men standing next to our pickup truck. They must have seen the terrified look on my face and the man following me as they immediately ran over to ask if I was alright. I was too scared to speak. Just shook my head frantically as I tried to get behind them. They immediately demanded to know why the man was following me. He fed them some BS line about being my brother. I just silently kept shaking my head. I guess I figured out what was happening at this point, so they started yelling at the man, accusing him of something. I did not stay to find out. I took the opportunity of him being distracted to start running away. The man noticed that I was leaving and tried to take off after me. The burly men really took offense to this as they immediately tackled him and threw him in the back of their pickup. He was screaming at this point. They sped off with a guy at an inconceivable speed right past me and just kept going. I was happy that they took him away, but I did not stop running until I reached home. I had no idea what to make of this entire exchange, but it really shook me. I don't know where they took the creepy guy or what they did with him after. In all honesty, I don't want to know. I told my parents and altered the route I walked home from school. I never saw him again, and I'm thankful for that. Even though I could not say what I needed in that moment, those two kind strangers saw that I was in distress and dealt with it for me. Even after all these years, I still remember the sheer terror and then relief when they took him away. Someone said they took him to a nice farm. He was taken to that train station. Someone says, I want to find these men and buy them 50 steaks each and not question what they did to the guy or where they took him. The heroes that scared children deserve. Okay. Next, this one's from 13 Days Ago by Zaven. It's called I Usually Don't Care About Graveyard Shifts, but Now I'm Terrified. I work at a graveyard shift as a security guard for a recycling yard. Can't say the company for obvious reasons. I've been on this site for 2 weeks, this being the second. Basically, every hour I make rounds across a giant recycling yard covered in various precious metals that are broken down and sold. During my shift, I scan various checkpoints and ensure nobody besides me is in the yard or facility. One of my other tasks is to go through some grassy and bushy terrain over a set of train tracks to take a photo of a warehouse far across. This is to ensure it is safe and clear. I have to use a flashlight with 2K lumens so I can see my way through pretty much the entire yard. Well, just an hour and a half ago on my round, I went through the grass and over the train tracks. I took the picture of the warehouse and submitted it. All of a sudden, I got this intense feeling that I'm being watched. My hairs on my neck stand up and I freeze. My flashlight is still on and pointing at the warehouse. I slowly turn around and point my flashlight behind me. Kid you not, about 10 yards away, I see a skinny, old, wrinkled white man with a large white beard sitting on a chair. He was looking directly at me. He had a dirty jean overalls and what I think was a Western style cowboy fedora on. He was bare skin under the overalls. Now I'm a 6 foot, 220 pound man, but I screamed F word at a pitch that was embarrassing. I accidentally dropped my flashlight out of shock. Mind you, there were tiny thin metal shards literally everywhere on the ground. I can't see a dang thing now that the flashlight is facing away from my sight. All I hear is a quick pace shuffling, clanging of metal from footsteps quickly running toward me. Once the metal crunching footsteps are within maybe 5 feet of me, I hear them quickly veer to the left and pass me. One moment, please. Within 3 to 4 seconds, the metal clanging is gone, followed by the faraway sound of rustling bushes. Then I grabbed my flashlight sound from the ground and pointed to the sound. The old man was gone, past the bushes to who knows where. I was shaking from adrenaline and fear. I managed to catch my breath and called several emergency contacts. When they arrived, the old man was gone. I believe maybe he was there to just watch the active trains move across. I say this because a metal chair was facing the tracks. It's still there. I took a photo of it, more as a memento if anything. This group doesn't allow photos, otherwise I would have shared. I am now in the office, still terrified and alone. I have to finish my shift tonight, and tomorrow do another 11-hour graveyard. I won't quit as I need the money. I just wanted to get this off my chest. Top comment says, "That's terrifying. It does sound like he was just watching the train, but still. You might want to consider a headlamp as well as a flashlight. It will leave your hands free if you need them. Also, get one of those high-powered flashlights. Point that in an intruder's face and it will momentarily blind them. And pepper spray, if it's legal in your state. Don't be a hero if something's going on. Get the hell out of there and call the cops." And OP says, "I keep seeing the headlamp comment and you are absolutely right. A headlamp would be much smarter. That way I don't drop it. I'm gonna order one." Someone thinks they should have a security dog. Someone said they did a similar job, and the scariest part is when the fog would roll in. Okay, let's do another one. I think we have time for maybe 2 more. And then we'll move over to the Scary Stories Reddit. This is by West Coast Trawler from 20 days ago, called "Fake Sheriff Approached Us While Camping." This happened about 15 years ago. So my buddies and I went fish camping at a pretty remote lake off a 4x4 trail about 2 hours from home. There were 4 of us, all men, with me being the smallest at 195 pounds, which is important later. The camping spot is a great fishing as it has a nice deep spot with lots of trout right next to it, but the campground itself is rough. It is on the right side of a steep hill with barely enough room for tents and a small fire ring. It is accessible by a rough, steep, winding 100-yard trail from where you park your 4x4 above the camp. We had a great day drinking beers and catching our limits on a nice sized trout. After it got dark, we made a small fire and just BS the night away. It was a great time. Suddenly, there was someone shining a blinding light in our eyes from about 10 to 20 yards away. We didn't hear the person approach at all. This person announced themselves as a sheriff. One of my friends asked, "Are you, our county's name, sheriff?" The stranger didn't respond to the question. Instead, he shined a light in each of our faces and said, "Have a good night," then walked off. We sat there dumbfounded, asking each other, what was that? After a minute or two, curiosity eventually got the better of me, so I lit up this person with my stupidly powerful flashlight. He was about 50 to 60 yards away at this point, right before the crest of the bend of the trail, right before he was out of sight. We all saw it. It was just some dude in a flannel shirt and jeans. I said, "That is not a sheriff." He must have heard me, as you can see him moving quickly for a second before he was out of sight. A few moments later, we heard an engine start, and that was that. Strange we didn't hear the vehicle earlier, but I attribute that to being drunk and loud. Now, what makes this kind of scary is, what if it wasn't 4 big dudes he approached? What if it was a single person or a couple? What would he intend to do? Should we have chased after this person? Debatable. Should we have reported this to the actual sheriff's department? Absolutely, but sadly we never did. Someone says he was gonna try and rob you, most likely. Someone says this is Zodiac Killer vibes, yikes. Okay, last one in this subreddit. This is from 10 days ago by Remote Teacher 4753. It's called Your Sixth Sense is Usually Right. My husband and I moved into a cool downtown loft in 1999 in San Diego's Gaslamp District. We had an underground parking garage that it was manned by security after the management team left for the day. My husband worked nights while I attended a UCSD. On New Year's Eve 1999, my good friend came to visit and hid the parties. 2000, baby. I had secured a spot for her in the visitor section and went down to meet her. The security guard on duty was a middle-aged gentleman, and I have long since forgotten his name. He was always very nice, but there was something about him that bothered me, and I didn't know why. When I met my friend at the gate, he came to speak to us and asked about our plans. My friend told him we were hitting the town on such an exciting night, etc. I said nothing until we got away from the building. For some reason I said, "Sean, if anything ever happens to me, tell the police to check that guy out." Not Cheyenne. My husband. She laughed and asked me why I told her. It was just a feeling I had. She reminded me of this later. You'll see why. A few weeks later, I saw him leaving the unit of my neighbor that I knew was out of town. I thought it odd that he was the parking lot guard, as he was the parking lot guard. When I mentioned it to another neighbor, she told me that the guards had the master key to the lofts in case of emergency. Okay, my husband works nights, he knows this. I get a creepy feeling around him. That's great. We added a chain to the door. It already had a bolt and a regular lock, and that made me feel a little better. Later that year, we were watching the news. The security guard's face pops up on the local TV. I pay close attention. Turns out he is one of the Aryan leaders from San Diego, and he has just been found guilty of some race-related crime that was sending him away for a long time. I lost it. Why? I am black, and my husband's white. I thought back to every time he spoke to us, how conciliatory he was, how much he'd ask how we were doing, how he would ask my husband about his job, all the little seemingly innocuous questions he put to us, and it scared me to death. He'd had the key to my home. He had to have been bothered by a relationship, but he never showed it, except to my sixth sense. I raced to the management office as soon as they opened the next day. One of my neighbors had beat me there. It was a guy whose unit I saw him exiting months before. He was threatening to sue management because he told them months ago that the guy was an Aryan and that he was distributing hate leaflets to his son. He was divorced, and the son stayed with him every other weekend. From the gist of his yelling, I discerned the management advised then that they'd asked, and the guard denied any knowledge of his pamphlets. His last words as he was leaving was that he was conferring with a lawyer since I did nothing at the time. Now this guy was on the news for hate crimes committed. He was obviously an Aryan, and their lack of intervention had allowed him to influence a minor. I had no idea what happened with him as he moved soon after. I told them about my concerns, and they'd said they contracted with a security company and he passed all background checks at the time of employment. Why he was even working as a security guard, I have no idea. Being young, I just let it go. Although I have forgotten his name, I can still clearly see his face when I think about him. I have tried looking him up on Google, but none of the search information I've used brings up his case. I have thought about looking it up at the courthouse. There must be some way, but then think, what's the point? He's in jail still, I hope. Someone says, always trust your instincts. If it feels wrong, it is wrong. Someone said, did you ever tell the neighbor that you saw the dude leaving his house while he was out of town? Glad you're okay. Opie says, I didn't know him well, and after talking to the other neighbor, I assumed the guard had a good reason to be there. Since it was daytime and he acknowledged me when I saw him, I figured he wasn't up to anything nefarious. I wish that I had said something then. Okay, we're gonna hop on over to the Scary Stories Reddit. Let's see what we can get out of this one. Top or past month. This is from 12 days ago by Bob Brewer, called My Brother Can't Talk. My little brother, Aiden, was 4 when we found out he'd never be able to talk. I could tell my mom was always concerned, but the panic only really set in when Aiden turned 3. She took him to every doctor in the country, and not a single person had an answer for her. There was nothing medical about it. He just didn't talk. He never cried when he was a baby, even when he was born. He never looked like he wanted to say anything. He only opened his mouth when he had to eat. Aiden wasn't shy. He would make eye contact and he would watch you even if you weren't looking. My mom decided to homeschool Aiden until he could speak. My dad didn't really have an opinion. Most of their time was spent studying the Bible. My mom tried teaching him basic math, science, history, but she was in no place to be teaching anything. Her whole life she lived on a farm with her father. She didn't receive any higher education. She didn't even graduate high school, but that didn't really matter to her. As long as she served the Lord as a good Catholic woman, the rest would take care of itself. Aiden liked taking my stuff. He liked taking my records and anything electronic. Eventually it got so bad I started keeping everything in a safe under my bed. When I asked him, he wouldn't admit to anything. He did it to my parents too, though it took them longer to figure out. Once I did, my dad put Aiden over his knee and belted him until he bled. Yet, he never let out a squeal, cry, or whimper. He always took his punishment in silence. He was my little brother, so I loved him, I guess. But I was so much older. Could I really love someone I've never talked to? Much less someone who steals everything I buy. I didn't know what to make of Aiden. I never looked at him, even when I knew he was looking at me. It made the smallest things really hard, to the point where it pissed me off. Why'd I have to feel so uncomfortable every night at dinner? I knew it probably wasn't his fault, but it was affecting my relationship with my parents. The house was bent around the elephant every single day. Everything was about him, no matter how hard we tried to move on, and it wasn't going to change. Although it never come out of mouth, I only knew one thing. I wished my brother was gone. One Sunday at church, everyone settled in their pews, and it was pretty crowded that day. The service was long and boring per usual. Looking at the clock made things worse. But after the service was over, Aiden handed my mom a note with a big word written in chicken scratch. Confession. My mom's face was gray. She showed my dad, and he didn't make much of it. He whispered something to my mom, then took Aiden's hand and walked him to a few members of the clergy at the altar. My mom told me what Dad said to her. He said there'd be a chance Aiden might talk, and I didn't know what to think. One of the ministers jovially walked Aiden to the booth. What could a 4-year-old have possibly done to warrant confession of sin? The thought made the priest laugh as they entered the booth. The two stayed inside for a long time. After 5 minutes, I was starting to get concerned. After 10 minutes, my dad suggested pulling him out. Then after 15 minutes, they finished. Aiden walked out of the booth and blissfully strolled over to hug my mom's leg. Next came the priest. His face was ghost white. His miserable eyes held tears. He was lost in his own mind. I watched as he rejoined the clergy. I saw the men address him, but he wouldn't respond. He couldn't talk. Someone says, sounds like a voice thief or something. Someone said, bro, he's the leprechaun for voices. That was good. This next one is called My Friend's Ex-Girl Knows Something We Don't, by Gang with several underscores, from 26 days ago. This is a shorter one. This is one of the most terrifying things I've ever experienced and really wanted the world to hear. I thought this was my chance. I had a roommate a few years ago from Spain that we lived together for some time. He had an ex-girl of a few years back in his country that broke up because he left. They kept connections here and there, but nothing much. One night when I got back to our apartment, he was on the phone with her and she apparently had a dream of him dying in a car accident. We both laughed and said it's nothing. They kept talking for a few minutes and saying random stuff right before they hung up, and she said be careful of the blue shark. We didn't think anything about it until a few hours later. His girlfriend, 1-month relationship from Germany, came over to hang out with us. We were chatting and all of a sudden we wanted to get something to eat. My boy, she did not have a car at this time, but knew how to drive. She said it's okay, just take my car because I have a motorcycle and he didn't know how to drive. She went in the door to grab her keys and toss them to him. The moment we saw them, we went cold. There was a blue shark on the keys. We didn't say anything for 5 minutes straight and just decided not to get food this day. It still creeps me out to this day because we know the girls had zero connection and knew nothing about the existence of one another. Premonitions. Unnerving stuff. OP says, it's not that scary, well, someone said, this is a scary story, rather it didn't really happen. Anyway, glad they listened and didn't go. And OP said, it's not that scary, but it actually happened. That's why most real stories are not that spooky, but still, it's weird to me. And I got the idea to post because of a TikTok I saw, and I just talked about it with a friend again today. Interesting. This one is from 12 days ago by 1,000 and a Nights, called Maisie's Kisses. Maisie realized her kisses kill when she was about 10. She was at the playground with her friend Henry. They ran over the seesaw together, holding hands for some reason. And then by the seesaw, Henry leaned over and kissed her fully on the lips before letting go of her hand and jumping on the seat. Maisie stood still for a moment, confused, and then ran to the other side, raised her arms and gripped the seat, pulled it down and jumped on. Henry went up, and then he fell like a stone with a very loud thud. He lay crumpled on the rubbery pink playground gravel, dead. They said it was a random heart failure, but Maisie knew better. After that, she avoided boys. Boys didn't like that, especially as she was a pretty little thing with soft, curvy lips, and the more she avoided them, the more they tried to kiss her. There was Jerry, who cornered her in the school cloakroom and kissed her with a loud smacking sound. She wiggled out of his grasp and dashed out, only to hear once again that loud thud. She knew before she turned around that he was dead, lying lifeless among the stinky sneakers littering the floor, and Michael, who stole a kiss on the bus just before his stop. He remained alive long enough to reach the door, then tumbled out head first onto the pavement below. And poor Paul. Maisie actually liked Paul. He was so good looking and bright, with bright sparkly eyes, and he was so kind and smart. They did homework together. They both wanted to be doctors. He helped her patiently with maths while she wrote up his essays. He would never kiss her suddenly when she didn't want it. She hoped desperately that would make a difference, inching closer and closer to him with her study sessions, letting her hand accidentally on purpose brush against his, until he asked politely, "Maisie, I've been dying to kiss you, may I?" She forgot about her curse and her moment of adolescent delight, and leaned forward with her lips parted, her eyes shining. "Oh, Paul," she breathed. As his lips pressed softly but firmly against hers, her whole body filled with joy, and she could barely let him pull away. They looked deep into each other's eyes, glowing with young love. And then she shrieked out in despair as the light dimmed in his eyes. He slumped over while she sobbed uncontrollably. She never forgave herself. She gave up her dream of becoming a doctor and relentlessly pursued another career, specializing in dealing with unwanted husbands and lovers, a surprisingly lucrative field. She smiled at her latest prey, Jason, sitting across the restaurant table. She didn't feel bad anymore. Those emotions were long gone. She had a job to do, and he wouldn't have asked her out when he was already married. He shouldn't have asked her out when he was already married. She leaned in. She was busy and didn't want to waste too much time on this one. That was a nice ending to that. I like that. Very cool story. Nice. She's using her skills. Kiss of death. Someone said, "I love this so much." Nice. That was a good one. This is from 3 days ago, called One, like the number one, word one, number one, more nightmare. Called, "Please, whatever you do, don't upvote this story. Please don't upvote this story. It takes a piece of me every time you do. This isn't a joke or a desperate ploy to get a hit story. I made a deal with a demon and it tricked me. It's my own fault. But every time the story is upvoted, he carves a piece of flesh the size of a 5-cent piece off me. I just wanted to be a good writer, but try as I might, I could never finish a story. I would sit in front of the computer for ages trying to work out what to write next, how to give a character a compelling story arc, or how to build suspense in the life or death moment. But I could never do it. I read books on how to structure a story and watched hundreds of hours of YouTube on how to overcome writer's block. I even tried ChatGPT to fill in the blanks. You know you're doing bad when AI tells you it doesn't understand. When my prayers went unanswered, I was at my rope's end. I wanted to throw in the towel and give up my dream. But then, something did answer my prayer. Something dark. Something evil. At first, I thought it was a dream. I never saw it directly, just in reflections. I would catch a glimpse of it, a dark, wispy shadow in my glass door, or see a dark shape move in the reflection of my stainless steel fridge. A horned figure standing behind me in the fogged-up bathroom mirror. But every time I would turn to look at it, there was nothing there. Then it messaged me in Reddit. I won't tell you the username as I don't want anyone trying to look it up. It said, "Hi," then the username, I don't want to say it again. "Looks like you could use some help." Me. "Hi, who are you?" "I'm the answer to your prayers. You asked for help writing a story, and I'm here to give you that help. I know you've seen me around your place. I've been watching you as you struggle, but I'm here to put that struggle to an end." Okay, is this some kind of joke? Not at all. Here, let me prove it to you. Just then my TV turned onto a static snow image. Then a horn silhouette came slightly visible and it spoke through the TV. You believe me now? Are you an angel? Once. Now I'm different. But I'm still here to help. I will help you write the greatest story you ever dreamed of. And all I ask is for small payment. Of course, I'm willing to try just about anything now. I can PayPal or Venmo. No. A small payment in flesh, the size of a 5-cent piece, is all I ask. And for that, I will give you the power to create literature art. The only catch is, once you agree, you have 24 hours to upload your story to Reddit, and it must meet their guidelines, so it cannot be removed. What happens if I can't? I struggle so much to finish the story, I'm worried I would fail. I will remove all barriers and clear your mind. You will be the greatest writer in modern history, if that's what you want. Yes, that's what I want. Okay, you have a deal. Done. As an upfront payment, I'm going to take a piece of flesh now. A searing pain in my chest hit me suddenly. I lifted my shirt and a small 5-cent sized piece of flesh had been carved out of me. I quickly opened the drawer and fished out a band-aid, covering the bleeding cavity from where the chunk of flesh had been removed. I started to think that this was a bad idea. I mean, to be honest, I didn't think it was true or would really happen. But that thought was washed away, a story idea starting to flood out of my mind. And just like that, I was writing. My mind was clearer than it had ever been. The stories were practically writing themselves. I opened my folder of incomplete stories, and within 6 hours I finished, edited, and proofed 5 stories. And they were good. Like, real good. They made me shiver when I read them. I couldn't believe it. I was struggling to work out what story to post first. I opened the chat again and wanted to thank this savior, this being that granted me this clarity. But as I was scrolling through the chat, I noticed something odd that I missed the first time. It was a gap in one of its messages. No, a small payment in flesh the size of a 5-cent piece is all I ask. And for that, I will give you the power to create literature art. The only catch is, once you agree, you have 25 hours to upload your story to Reddit. I hovered my mouse over it, but nothing came up, so I copied the chat and pasted it to Word. I highlighted all of the text and selected black font. That's when I realized how much of a mistake I had just made. The space was some hidden words, which I had unknowingly agreed to. It said, no, a small payment in flesh per upvote. The size of a 5-cent piece is all I ask. At that point, I knew the grave mistake I had just made. A new message popped up. You have 18 hours left to upload your story. That last message came through 17 hours ago. I spent the time trying to work a way out of this deal, and the only thing I can think of is to plead with you, people of Scary Stories Reddit. Please do not upvote this story. Don't downvote it either, it's not worth the risk. Just ignore it. Keep scrolling, and never, ever accept help to write from a demon. Top comment said, I upvoted Feel the Pain. And OP said, he took a piece of my chest for your upvote. Someone said, get you a lawyer, bro. That stuff won't stand in demon court. Upvoted though. OP said, thanks, just lost a piece of my texting thumb due to your upvote. But do you know a good demon lawyer? We'll do one more. This is called I Think Discovered a Worldwide Secret by Silly Wrongdoer 3709 from 14 days ago. You may or may not have heard of the Osiris shaft. If you haven't, it's a place between the Egyptian pyramid where the public can visit. However, what less people may know is it's beyond the walls of the shaft. I was with a tour group in the Osiris shaft. It was amazing. A once-in-a-lifetime experience for most people, but not me. My experience was probably once in a blue moon. Maybe the first experience for anyone. I broke off from the tour group to take some pictures. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to or not, but I didn't want to leave empty-handed. The wall that supposedly shielded off more to the public. I headed down that wall, snapping pictures along my way. I came across a section of wall which was different than the rest. It was a different shade of yellow. I looked around and noticed a tiny gap in the bottom corner of the discolored wall. I looked back at my tour group, then at the gap. I carefully placed my camera through the gap and squeezed through after it. I stood up. It was pitch black. I couldn't even tell what was up ahead. I slowly went forward down what I assumed was a tunnel. I reached a small shaft surrounded by wooden beams. I could see dim light. I climbed down the ladder, shaking at what I might find. Then I reached the bottom. I turned around. I tried filming with my camera, but after about 1 minute my SD card ran out, and I didn't have the spare on me. There were lamps along the wall. They connected to the same wire. What was this? I thought it must be something that some geologists or historians set up after further work down here. I couldn't be more wrong. I went down the lit-up tunnel, half hoping I'd come across a person. I reached the end of the corridor. I saw a most out-of-place door imaginable. It was iron, like the service doors you see in the tube. It was very rusty. I heaved it open and walked through it. The other side was pitch black. Slowly and cautiously I stepped forward. Every step felt risky. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. As I went for the 5th step, my foot met with something hard and I went over. As I was getting back up, I had the idea of using my camera flash as my torch. As I did, I directed it down to see what I tripped on. A rail. I looked directly at my feet. Another rail just in front of my feet. I was on a train line. What? I said out loud. I went back to the door, thinking it was a modern subway. Then I realized it could be a modern subway or possibly a mine shaft railway with mine carts at the ends. So I decided to walk left. I walked slowly, keeping the left side of the railway. After a while of walking, I suddenly came across something. This is what changed my entire life. A train. It wasn't moving. It looked abandoned. It was silver and looked like the Chicago subway trains. The door and small windows in the front were boarded up with wood. I walked up to the front of the train. I climbed onto the small step. And with my forearm and elbow, I broke down the wooden board. It fell apart like polystyrene. I walked into the cab. The technology was so advanced. It had a massive GPS system on the right-hand side. I couldn't be sure if it was modern or not. Some sort of advanced technology from Egyptian times. I went over to the massive GPS system. It was a map that looked like a globe. What I assumed were stations marked on the GPS were all in hieroglyphics. What had I discovered? I busted the next wooden board that led from the cab into the rest of the train. The carriages were so different on the inside. The decoration down the walls above and below the windows were amazing. There were pictures of pharaohs on all the seats, and they appeared every meter or 2 along the top wall. In my mind, I couldn't escape what I was seeing. This is history that was widely covered up, but why? I carried on down the train. The doors were even decorated too. I eventually found a missing door and jumped through that. I walked the way I was walking before on the left of the train. Suddenly I reached a station. It was so different to the kinds of things we had. The layout was somewhat similar to tube stations. There was one railway, then a walkway between the other platform, where there was the railway going the other way. The station seemed abandoned, for sure, but was it an old part of a still used station? I went up a set of stairs, which were decorated the same designs again. I reached the top, and it was walled off. They'd completely sealed it. However, it didn't stop me from hearing the faint voices on the other side. Wherever I was, a certain life form lived here. Humans? Possibly. Alien forms? Equally possible. I backed up down the stairs and jumped into the same railway as the one before. I had to keep exploring. On my way to the next station, I came across another train, but passed by it. Suddenly, I came out of the confined tunnel. The track stopped dead as I did. I can never forget what I saw. There was an active transit system going in and out of this huge structure. It was insanely tall and wide. It had stairs leading up to it. It had Egyptian patterns carved into it. It was taller than any pyramid. Suddenly, I was hit with a crippling feeling of being watched by lots of other, life forms. This definitely wasn't human. The feeling grew, so I turned and legged it back down the tunnel. I could hear something behind me. I passed the second train, then the station. Eventually, I reached the first train. Not far to go. I reached the open metal door and ran. After closing it, I saw white glowing eyes running at me at an inhuman speed. I slammed the door shut before I could get in and sprinted back to the Osiris shaft. For me, I'm never trusting anyone again. Everyone's saying, great story, good read. Someone said, I think some of this might even be true, well written. And OP replied, thanks, I wrote this based off a theory about what's behind the Osiris shaft. And that's our last story. It's been a while. I'm glad we could do this again. Let's switch on over to just chatting and change my music. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's stream of scary stories. I am now 21 and it's a good birthday. It's been a good birthday. So I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard for some more mail time. We're going to see if there's any friends we can raid, and while I'm doing that, if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed, please consider subscribing. It takes 2 seconds, and it's completely free, so you can always unsubscribe later. And Lena is streaming some Valorant, so we are going to raid Lena. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Bye.